I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is a teenager from Alaska named Denali Brehmer. Now, this teenager connected with someone on the internet who wasn't exactly who he said he was. Then things got really, really dark. Here's her story. 5 teenagers in Alaska murdered their friend Cynthia Hoffman on June 2nd, 2019. She was 19 years old and developmentally disabled. Investigators say she was killed because of an online scheme. A man they had never met promised millions of dollars to murder someone. CBS News spoke with the victim's father.
The only thing I know is that my daughter trusted these people. My daughter just wanted friends. Now I have to bury her.
The plot to murder Hoffman began when Denali Brehmer began an online relationship with a man calling himself Tyler and claimed to be a millionaire. But Tyler was really 21-year-old Darren Schillmiller, who lived in Indiana and was not a millionaire. He told Brehmer if she murdered someone and sent him photos and videos of it, then he would give her $9 million. She agreed and enlisted the help of Caleb Leland, Caden McIntosh, and 2 unnamed minors. CBS News was at one of Brehmer's hearings.
I know what I did was wrong, and I know I could have probably done something different if I was able to.
The teens lured Hoffman to Thunderbird Falls trailhead for a hike. McIntosh shot her in the head and put her body in the river. One day after she went missing, her body was found bound with duct tape. Brehmer's mother went to police when her daughter and McIntosh told her they had killed Hoffman. Alaska's news source was there when she spoke in court.
He was very matter-of-fact about the whole thing, almost glib. When he told me about shooting Cynthia in the head and kicking her body into the water, he laughed. And I will never in my life forget that.
Darren Schillmiller and Denali Brehmer were sentenced to 99 years after pleading guilty to murder. Caden McIntosh and Caleb Leland have also pleaded guilty. This story, you think about it, it doesn't make sense. Where does this all come from? What's really going on inside the mind of these people, especially Denali Brehmer? So, Denali Brehmer's locked up behind bars, but investigative reporter David Scott spoke to her to try to get a better understanding of how this could happen, why this could happen, and what was going on in her mind. Take a listen.
Did it not occur to you that he was playing you?
Well, I mean, it was really hard because I did look up all the photos online. None of them came back as anything. I looked up the number. It was registered to the name he had given to me. Looked up the PayPal. It was registered to the name he was given to me.
So he was a good catfisher.
He was a good catfisher. I mean, this is one thing I'll give him props for. I mean, he got me, so he's a good catfisher.
Now, at what point did he start asking you to do sexual things for money? Was it right out the box? Or?
Well, I mean, that's kind of like how we met, was on the dating app. Because it's illegal, I put in a not so clear way. Hey, I'll do this for cash. Yeah. I'll do this for this. If you want to know anything more, text me. This is my number, this is my Snap. So, like, here you knew right out the bat what I was up to, and so that's where I make my money, so
he was paying you?
For photos and videos. And I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, he was paying me a lot.
And the requests get more and more perverted.
Yeah, and that's when he was, like, pushing more and more money towards me.
So who first brought up the prospect of murder? Was it you or was it him?
Darren. Darren's the one that first came up with it.
He's telling you he loves you.
Yeah.
In fact, you're telling each other you're in love.
Yeah, I told him that too, but, like, I don't know. Even, like, now I'm starting to question if I really believed it. Like, I just think I just kept wanting him to get me easy money.
She's a teenager. What's going on here? What is motivating this behavior and this idea to take someone's life? Why? That brings me to my first question in this case, in this investigation, which is, was this about love or money between these two? What exactly is going on here? Let me bring in my guests. Joining me, the investigative reporter who exclusively interviewed Denali Brehmer, David Scott, is with us. Also joining us, clinical and forensic psychologist, researcher, expert on violent crime, and author of the book, The New Evil, Dr. Gary Brucato is with us as well. Thank you both. David, let me begin with you. Amazing work, first of all. What are your thoughts about that question? Was this about love or was this about money?
Well, I think Denali answers the question at the end of that clip you just heard. Easy money. This was overwhelmingly motivated by financial gain. Denali was somebody who, when she wasn't dealing drugs, was selling sex acts on the internet. And that's how she met Darren Schillmiller, the online Svengali who's said to have pulled the strings. And that's how she was ensnared by him, or perhaps she ensnared him. It's not entirely clear to me who was the predator and who was the prey in this catfishing relationship. But it is clear that she was primarily motivated by money, and love was not even a distant second. In fact, the detectives say that the very first things out of her mouth when she was first interviewed by police was Tyler in Kansas is behind this whole thing. So that's how much she loved him. She threw him under the bus immediately. No, this is a woman who was a predator in her own right, and alongside this murder plot was an equally torrid child pornography plot, also carried out by Denali Brehmer and Darren Schillmiller, and the details of those crimes will make your skin crawl.
Dr. Gary Brucato, what are your thoughts about the relationship between these two, and who's controlling who, and what's the nature of this relationship?
Well, I agree that finance were the predominant thing on here. I'm getting an echo, excuse me. But it seems to me, I'm sorry, I'm getting a very bad echo.
We've got you clear right now, Gary.
Okay, there you are. I think that the finances were the predominant reason for this dynamic. One of the clues to that is the idea that she was willing to share this money with other people. In other words, it wasn't just a thing like we're in an intimate relationship and it means a lot to me. It's more like this is about cash. I need some helpers. Let me recruit some other people. That's a little bit of a clue for me. I think what you had here was a very contemporary version of a kind of grooming dynamic where you're using the means of online catfishing, where you can hide behind a camera and a fake name to slowly break down somebody's will to do things that are more and more horrible. And this, it was a little easier because there was a financial component to it. But I do think that somewhere along the way, this very powerful secondary tool was used, which was making this person who probably had, you know, some pretty negative ideas about herself to be willing to do what she was doing and to be in need of the resources that she needed. My guess is that he preyed on that, kind of love bombed her, made her believe that she was very special and she'd be willing more and more to do equally, you know, increasingly horrendous things.
David, when it comes to the money, he's putting himself out there as being very wealthy and throwing very large numbers out there. But there was money exchanged. Do we have any idea the amounts, the level of money that's going back and forth here?
According to Brehmer, it was thousands of dollars. She doesn't say exactly how many thousands, and police don't seem to have corroborated this this part of the money trail. But according to her, you know, she was providing photos and videos of herself with other people, performing sex acts, and also helping to arrange for photos and video of minor children to send to him. And according to her, he was paying her for all of that. That was the nature of the early relationship. It was transactional.
Yeah, Dr. Gary Brucato, we have about 30 seconds here, but this is extremely dark behavior that we're talking about. If this doesn't happen, right, this internet connection doesn't happen, is it still within someone's mind that, hey, they could get there to that place of taking the life of an innocent person?
Well, it's an interesting case because it raises the question of what a person could be driven to under the circumstances of a financial need or an emotional need. And you have to wonder, what would they have done if they weren't kind of being manipulated by a stronger-willed, perverse person? And what it looks like here is that there must have been some psychological component or emotional immaturity in this individual, where she had her own perversions and her own proclivities, and this strong-willed guy was able to kind of suck her into doing these things. But I don't think we're dealing with an innocent here.
Okay, my guests are going to stay with us. Coming up next, why did they choose to murder Cynthia?
When I heard of that she had gone missing, at first I thought, oh snap. Do I need to leave work now? Like, wait, she's 19, she's an adult, I'm sure she can take care of herself. 2 days later, her body had been found. I'm like, I should have left work. Can't really focus on what ifs now, right?
Soon to Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, I will have you destroyed.
She's got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
Shame on you, Richard Allen!
It's scary just knowing that he was so close.
I promise you, it was not intentional.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon, only on Court TV.
It's unclear when exactly that conversation happened, whether it happened in a car, whether it happened in an apartment. There's some information that somebody else knew about it and was present. Regardless, there was a conversation about who should die. And unfortunately for Cynthia, nobody in the group other than Ms. Brehmer knew her.
This is extremely disturbing. A group of young people getting together and saying, all right, let's vote on who we're going to murder in cold blood. And they end up killing a young woman who liked and trusted them. This is, I don't understand this, but I want you to take a listen to the victim's sister. Samantha's her name. The victim is Cynthia Hoffman. She was a young woman who had some developmental issues, but was extremely trusting, and it ends up costing her her life. Let's take a listen.
We heard yesterday that he had some hopes and dreams for his future, but did it ever occur to him and everybody else that perhaps my sister had some hopes and dreams of her own? Sadly, that was snapped out. And honestly, I'm not just angry, I am sad too. Because I did not just lost a sister, I lost a friend. Not many know this, but did you know that an older sibling is the first friend that a younger sibling would ever make in their life? Because I believe it's true. Because I wasn't just her sister, I was her friend. And last I saw Cynthia, last I spoke to her, she literally told me that I was the sister that she would go to for her secrets, to tell her secrets, and pretty much for anything. Choked me up quite a bit. I'm like, oh, man, I'm touched. And when I heard of that she had gone missing, at first I thought, oh snap. It's like, do I need to leave work now? Like, wait, she's 19, she's an adult. I'm sure she can take care of herself. 2 days later, her body hadn't been found. I'm like, I should have left work. Can't really focus on what ifs now, right? But what we should focus on would be what's going to happen next. Guess that's it for now.
You could feel the pain. You can feel the pain during that impact statement. I want to get to our next question, and it's about the victim, Cynthia. And why did they choose to murder Cynthia? Why was it Cynthia that they went after in this so-called scheme to make millions of dollars? Why'd they choose her? We bring back in my guest, David Scott, investigative reporter and clinical and forensic psychologist, Dr. Gary Brucato. All right, David, what more details did you learn in your investigation of this case about why Cynthia was chosen to be the victim of this scheme?
Right. Well, police do believe that Denali Brehmer did essentially choose the victim, and in our interview, she articulates a clear motive for doing so, even as she points the fingers at others. According to Denali, the victim had slept with her ex-boyfriend, either before or after Denali slept with the victim's ex-boyfriend. And that generated such vitriol that Denali Brehmer decided Cynthia needed to see payback for that. It was petty hatred, a burst of petty hatred, that led to Cynthia Hoffman being targeted for death.
Dr. Gary Brucato, how about the other scene, right? So it seems like Denali is putting Cynthia in the crosshairs here, but then the group does like a vote. How does a group of people, all right, who are we going to murder? That is, I don't understand how you could sit there, and I guess, is it just they're seeing dollar signs and they're not seeing a human being?
Well, the story that I'm hearing here about Denali's explanation, first of all, is very disturbing to me, because if the story is not true, then there's a little bit of a kind of victim blaming and an externalization, as if the victim had done something to warrant being selected for something so horrendous. What I think is far more likely is that this offender on the other side, Schillmiller, was describing a fantasy which required casting with a very particular kind of victim for the fulfillment of the fantasy. And I think that that individual needed to be someone easily dominated and young. And we have to remember that Cynthia Hoffman, as she was called, Cece, she intellectually, you know, because of her disability, was closer to 12 years old. We have to imagine. And I think that she was selected because of her disability and her trusting nature, and in order to fulfill that perverse fantasy. And I think for the rest of the group, beyond Denali, this was a kind of financial arrangement where everybody just kind of got callous, saw dollar signs, and went along. But I do think that in the central story here, what you have is a sexually perverse individual who is trying to get somebody to give them what essentially amounted to fantasy snuff footage for sexual gratification. And I think that required young, helpless people. Because we do know about that offender that he had interests in children even as young as infancy in his particular fantasies.
And David, Cynthia or Cece, what was her understanding of her relationship with Denali and who she was in her life?
Yeah, it's very hard to tease apart. Brehmer says that Cynthia was part of this friend group and even part of the transactional nature of some of the sexual activity that they were peddling online. It sounds entirely possible that that Cynthia was looking for approbation by her peers, looking for a friend group to belong to, not realizing that she was in the crosshairs. And what something that Greg said really resonates. I just want to read a quick piece of a message that the police found in Denali Brehmer's iCloud notes about this. She says, "Cynthia is very trusting. Her fault, also very gullible, probably a little special, so it'll be easier to get her to agree to coming out." And then she talks about walking her to this secluded glacier. "When we're far enough out, I'll record me yelling at her and telling her everything she did wrong to me to deserve being killed. I'll raise the gun and shoot her in the shoulder, making her fall, laughing, enjoying every minute of her pain." And it goes on and on and on. So you start, what starts to come into the focus is an extremely antisocial type in Denali Brehmer, who's already on the slippery slope down, a lifestyle of drug dealing, drug taking. For example, the morning of the murder, she told me she shot up a cocktail of methamphetamine and cocaine. She was dealing drugs. She was carrying guns, illegal guns, on a regular basis, quote unquote, whoring herself out. So this is not just any group of friends trying to pass the time or figure out how to make a buck. These kids were trouble, and
absolute trouble.
Denali was trouble with a capital T.
We're out of time for now. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of Denali Brehmer, a teenager from Alaska who was offered a whole lot of money to do something really, really awful. And she did it. Here's her story. Denali Brehmer met Darren Schillmiller on a dating app, only Darren wasn't exactly who he said he was. He claimed to be a wealthy millionaire from Kansas named Tyler, but in reality was just a 21-year-old from Indiana still living at home. During the course of their relationship, Denali sent explicit photos and videos in exchange for money, but the relationship seemed to grow as they also exchanged I love yous. Then things turned dark when Schillmiller offered Denali $9 million to rape and kill someone. She did kill someone with the help of some friends, and now Denali is speaking out from behind bars. We're going into a real dark place, the mind of a killer, an admitted killer, killing for money. For money, just killing someone she knew for money and getting her friends to come along and for the ride. So you're wondering, what's going on here? Like, who does that? Why would they do it? What are they thinking about as they're doing it? And what are they thinking about now in the aftermath of all of this? Well, Denali sat down with David Scott, investigative reporter, behind bars, sitting together in the same room, across from one another, revealing a lot. I mean, a lot about what's going on with this killer. Let's take a listen.
I just went along and said, sure. But he was talking with all my co-defendants and me, so if at the end of the day we're all kind of the masterminds. I was the driver. I was given a car by my other co-defendant, Caleb. Caleb came up with this weird suggestion that we, do what they did in those weird mafia movies. Yeah, and I was like, you guys are idiots.
After confessing to the police, it sounds like you're now backtracking and pointing the finger at others to reduce your culpability.
I'm not trying to fully do that. I'm just, saying what really happened now.
You chose the victim.
Yeah, it was a group thing, too, but initially, When we all came up with it, I agreed. I mean, she was mad at me, and I slept with her ex. She slept with mine. She needed payback for what she did.
Payback with her life?
No. That's on me.
You chose the place?
Yeah.
You tricked her into going along with the whole duct taping and photographing. You watched her struggle, right?
Yeah, we did. I did. Mm-hmm. He did.
The police say you gave McIntosh the gun. Mm-hmm. You say he took it from you. Yeah,
it was right outside on my holster.
Okay. Did you watch him point it at her head?
Yeah.
Bang. Right? One shot?
One shot. That was it.
Back of the head? Execution style. And what were you doing?
Staring.
Staring.
I didn't say anything. I guess I watched.
Did it occur to you at that point that you had just gone from troubled teen to teenage murderer?
Not at that exact moment in time. My only thought was, get out of here.
Get out of here.
Leave.
What a scene. What a scene. A lot of questions about this. A lot of questions. But let's get to the next one, which is about her, Denali Brehmer. Does Brehmer have any remorse? She was there. She's leading this whole operation, handing the murder weapon over, watching it happen, and just concerned about getting out of there. Does she have any remorse about this? Well, let me bring in my guest. Joining me, the investigative reporter who interviewed Denali Brehmer, David Scott, is with us. Also joining us, clinical forensic psychologist and CEO of TripSitter.Clinic, Dr. John Huber is also with us. Thank you both. David, first question. Well, first two questions, okay? Why did she agree to the interview? And what was it like to sit in the room with her across the table, knowing everything that you know about what happened in those moments?
Yeah. Why did she agree? Very good question. According to her, her lawyer told her not to do it. All of her friends inside prison told her not to do it. I think, she is somebody who, probably thought that that she could outsmart everyone, that she could come on and, make her case. She was actually accorded, I think, a lot of sympathetic narrative in the sentencing process because of her troubled childhood. She was able to parlay that into a lot of consideration about where she would be incarcerated and so forth. And I think she's angling for her next appeal. Maybe she's rethinking the whole thing now. She did not cover herself in glory in that interview. But what strikes me is like she came kind of bopping in, happy, almost giddy. And that's exactly the way the detective described her in the very first police interview they did after the crime. I mean, within days of the murder. And so I'm not so sure she's capable, or how capable she is, of empathy. Her willingness to make her best friend of the target of murder, her willingness to make one of her young minor siblings a victim of child pornography. Another minor associated with the case also became a victim of child pornography by Brehmer and Schillmiller. So she's not somebody who shows much regard, any regard really, for the welfare of others. Denali is mostly concerned about her own well-being, and I think she probably thought in her twisted perspective that she could come on, wax apologetic and start to build momentum towards an appeal.
All right, Dr. John Huber, are you sensing any remorse from her? Because I don't think anyone is necessarily sensing that. And if not, what type of person, after doing what she did, would not feel remorse?
Look at what we do when we go off to war. When we were drafted back in Vietnam and into World War II, the first thing the average Joe walking out there did is they started dehumanizing their enemy so that it didn't bother them. It's really easy to do when you have somebody with developmental delays. They're somehow different use, a little slower. They said she was functioning on a 12-year-old level. you can rationalize inappropriately so that somehow her life isn't worth as much as yours. And now it is, hey, it's almost like a mercy killing. I mean, it's really a sad thing to think about, and it's devastating, of course, the fear and trauma that young lady, Cece, went through when she was bound and had her mouth gagged and could not, plead for help or anything else. And that allowed this whole situation to move forward. And I think, really from what I've read and what I've seen in the interviews, that Denali was the ringleader. She was the one who instigated everything. She was the only one who knew this person in the first place, Cece, and that put her in a place of importance and power, something she's probably had very little of in her whole life, knowing her developmental history. And then the idea of her bopping in, man, she's got the attention of the world. She's on national television. She is now, in her eyes, some kind of a starlet, and she's being blessed in such a way. She, at that point, when she initially was interviewed by the police, she probably still felt that there was still a chance she was going to get her money, and that she'd be able to fight her way out of the court and make up some story. It was everybody else's fault. These minor children, they convinced me to do this. The whole rationalization and dehumanizing of Cece was really the crux that made her real easily fall into that. She's not a human. She's less important than the rest of us in this group. So it's really not going to be that big of a deal if she's not found. And it's very disturbing. She doesn't seem to have any remorse. She's thrown her peers under the bus, tried to blame it. And David, you did a question. It was really great when you asked her about, are you trying to save yourself? And then she goes, well, not that much. She minimized, but that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to dig herself out of a hole.
Does she have any sort of, David, relationship with anyone, like a normal, I mean, I know she's in prison, but any sort of normal relationship with anyone in her life?
It's a fair question. She had recently reconnected with her biological mother. She seems estranged from her adoptive family. It's interesting. She leans heavily on what was, by all accounts, a brutal, nightmarish childhood. And yet her sisters who had the same childhood have publicly spoken out against her, saying, we all had it hard, but she chose the path that she's on, and now she's paying the price. I don't see signs of remorse. I see some signs of regret over the consequences that have befallen her. But it's hard to glean any kind of true empathy from her words and her overall countenance, frankly.
So, Dr. John Huber, ultimately, where does it come from? Can we point to what happens in your childhood? Is someone wired this way, more susceptible?
It's a combination of things. We can go back and look at developmental processing, what happens in the first 12 to 14 weeks of life, and look at attachment theories and all of this. But it's not one single thing. It's a culmination of stuff. And then the opportunity, this golden egg that was handed to her by the gentleman in Indiana, saying, hey, I've got $9 million. Here's what I want you to do, and you can be rich. And everything else goes out the window because, I mean, she's in Alaska. She's struggling in her own life. She's not, she's never had anything like we find out from her developmental situation, the trauma she went through. And, it's really easy for her siblings to say, we grew up in the same thing, but none of them were offered that $9 million to go do that. And money is a powerful, powerful thing. And when you're not thinking too far in the future, it's really easy to just look in the here and now. And I think she's got some issues cognitively. She's struggling with at the same time. So she's looking at wealth and fame and, man, I'm going to get out of this because I'm going to be famous. I mean, I've worked on cases where the people coming in, their defense was the judge will not prosecute me because I'm famous. And that's absolutely not true.
No. Happens all the time on court TV. I just want to button this up by taking a listen to Cynthia's uncles talking about the issue of remorse.
So far, I've seen no remorse from the other people, and just hope that somewhere along the line that everyone will find closure, man. I haven't even begun the grief yet.
Like my brother Robert said, you know, the last two people that we've dealt with on this case, they have showed no remorse at all about what has happened. You know, not even a sincere apology, nothing.
Still to come, does Brehmer's story make sense?
I was just planning on intimidating her, but when she started freaking out, saying she's gonna go to the cops and everything else, that's when he shot her, I was just like, well, problem solved.
One of the most successful true crime TV shows ever.
This is crazy.
Now has a new home on America's original true crime obsession, 48 Hours, on Court TV. Coming up next on Court TV.
All season long, the greatest players in the world compete here.
I won't break. Welcome to the NWSL.
The NWSL is on ION. Find where to watch on IONNWSL.com.
My niece, Cynthia, as you all know, she was tragically taken from us, murdered. It's, the details that I've learned in the last week is just horrific. I just can't even fathom what she went through. It just breaks my heart every time I think about it.
Heartbreaking and horrific, the murder of Cynthia Hoffman. That's her uncle giving a victim impact statement. So what exactly happened at the moment that Cynthia Hoffman's life was taken at the scene? What was going on? How and why did it happen? How did it transpire in the actual moment? Well, Denali Brehmer sat down for that interview behind bars. Here's her version of what happened.
You had lots of chances to change your mind. She reached for her phone to call help.
No, she never had her phone.
You reached for the 9mm.
I did at first, but then I stopped myself. She just went over by the river, and then she started threatening us. And that's when we both panicked. And I was like, I can't get arrested. I got a bunch of dope in my car. So, like, I didn't want to go to jail for drug charges or kidnapping.
And you thought that the way to control the damage was to go through with the plan and murder her?
I just went along with it because problem solved, right? I was just planning on intimidating her, but when she started freaking out, saying she's gonna go to the cops and everything else, that's when he shot her, I was just like, well, problem solved.
Just there to intimidate her? Is that the truth? Brings me to my next question, which is all about what she just said. Does Brehmer's story here make sense about what happened at the scene and in the moment that Cynthia's life was taken? David Scott, Dr. John Huber still with me. David, does her story make sense? Does it match up with the evidence in the case? Or you get the feeling as you're sitting across the table from her that she's trying to sell you something, that she's lying?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on which of her stories you're referring to. You know, initially she said that Caden McIntosh took the gun from her and shot Cynthia. Then she confessed that she gave him the gun and ordered him to shoot. Now she's back to the first story. She also said that it was all Tyler's idea. Well, the police recorded her a month after she was arrested on the phone with her mother, saying that she came up with the idea for the murder. And you know, she confessed to being the mastermind, and now she's walking that back. So it could be that Denali Brehmer is somebody incapable of telling the truth. It could be that you know, she is angling to reduce her culpability and, you know, perchance her sentence. But I think it's pretty clear from the overall record that we can't believe anything that she says. She's got no credibility.
Dr. John Huber, we cover trials, accused murderers, and sometimes they have a little different story. This story's changed so many different times, and she's still telling stories. David sits down an interview with her and gets another story from her. What does that tell us about her?
Well, a few things. First of all, it tells us she's not very sophisticated. If she had thought this out and really realized she was going to get caught, she'd had her game plan already lined out. Her storyline would have stayed relatively consistent. The fact that she keeps bouncing from one thing to another, she realizes that we're not buying everything and that we know she is much more in charge of that situation and much more culpable than what she claims to be in this last story. And she liked at the time, I think she was enjoying the power and the control she had over that group of people and then ordering, which is what I think happened. I think she really ordered him to shoot, and he did. So, in a weird way, she's like a lot of other mastermind, gang leaders tell people what to do. She was in charge. She had the life of a friend in her hand. And if she said, no, let's not do this, she'd have gotten in trouble for kidnapping. She wouldn't be looking at 99 years for killing somebody, though, and there's a big difference. She could have probably been out in 7 to 15 years if she'd have done the kidnapping, but in this case, she is. We'll probably never see her again unless she's behind bars.
And David, did you get any sense of what her life behind bars has been like for her? Because I've spoken to people who say, it's still a life. It's not the life that we enjoy on the outside, but it's a life. There's socialization, there's things. What's going on? Do we know?
Well, she somehow managed to get herself into a women's prison outside of Anchorage that looks like a mountain lodge and has a reputation for soft time. They call it Camp Cupcake as a result. I'm not sure how she achieved that, given the brutality and callousness of her crime. But as I said, if you read the sentencing hearing record, there's a lot of sympathy accorded to her because of her nightmarish youth and childhood, and that includes a conversation about where she would be safest from Alaskan retribution and where she would be able to take advantage of the most resources. They actually talked about putting her in the federal prison system for that purpose. So she's been in a way, she's been a savvy and a wily player in the system, and she seems to be enjoying, as comfortable a life behind bars as any murder defendant, could ever hope for, frankly.
Dr. John Huber, we have about 30 seconds here. Are you surprised by any of that?
No, if I was on her defense, that's what I would be trying to do. I would be talking with her attorney saying, okay, we know she did this. Let's try and get her to the best situation as possible. We know she's probably never going to see the daylight, as a free woman ever again. And that's what we would try and do. Just like if I was on the prosecution side, I would be trying to minimize her developmental issues and give examples of other people who've gone through the same thing and become attorneys, become surgeons, become political leaders. I mean, I could see both sides of the story.
Well, from what you just said, I could see her as a politician, but not as a surgeon. But not as a surgeon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you both, Dr. John Huber, incredible insight, and award-winning investigative reporter David Scott. Such a pleasure to have you on the show. Great work. Look forward to seeing you again. All right, folks. This whole thing started with a connection on the internet, and we know the internet can be dangerous, and we know there's a lot of antisocial behavior on the internet, but that's not what scares me here. What scares me in this case is that this woman was able to spearhead and convince her friends who had their whole lives in front of them to join her in all of this. And that should give all of us chills in this case. But at least we know that justice is being served here and people are being held accountable. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.